Hello again, friends. A pleasure to be here with you once more to present another episode. Today, I bring you another episode that has been highly requested by many people in the comments, wanting to know a bit more about the owner of a very famous car. Some call it the unicorn, and it's been the subject of debate, gossip, news. They've made up many stories about this one-of-a-kind car. So, we're going to reveal a few details that some people in Culiacan do know, but the vast majority of people from outside Culiacan are unaware of them. We're talking about the McLaren F1 chassis number 39. I don't know why everyone says it's lost. No, folks, it's not lost. It's very well kept and in perfect condition. Here is a photo of this car taken many, many years ago. The owner of this car was Humberto Ojeda, also known as El Robachivas. Other people also called him Beto de la Loma. In fact, there's a corrido named that, Beto de la Loma, and it's sung by the famous artist Roberto Tapia. I recommend you listen to it. Well, some also called him Humberto the Pelocino. Let's quickly clear up the rumors about the car. In many national news in Mexico and international, and several YouTube videos. One question where they relate or mention that the owner of this car was El Pocha. Here we'll utterly debunk that myth. No, the Pocha does not have absolutely anything to do with this car. In fact, El Robachivas was not even a partner of El Pocha, moreover. In the corrido that I just mentioned, sung by Roberto Tapia, called Beto El de la Loma, there's a part that says a greeting to the Colombian, they outsmarted me first. Well, when this corrido was first made, the original lyric said a shout-out to Compa Pocha, they outsmarted me first. But when Roberto Tapia introduced the corrido, he was told no, that he had removed that because Robachivas had no relationship whatsoever with Pocha. And so Roberto Tapia changed the lyrics and removed Pocha and added a shout-out to the Colombian. Well, once this point is clarified, this man, Humberto Ojeda, worked very hard, but when I say very hard, it's very, very hard. Moved industrial quantities of merchandise to the United States. It's said that he could generate over $100 million a month. He was like a rival to the Lord of the Skies, but his business didn't stop there. He also sent to Europe and had a very, very large market in the old continent. He had a client/partner. Then te director, that what was sent to him, he would get it out. It was an exaggerated thing. It was something too incredible because I don't know what else to call it. Imagine loads and loads for the United States and loads for Europe. I believe he was one of the first Sinaloans to send massive shipments of merchandise to Europe. A lot of people comment and question while others compare. People started saying that this character had more money, that this other one more, and other people say, no, of course not. This character had more money than that one. The reality. It's incredibly difficult to estimate how much money a certain person has, or how much money they make. Many people draw conclusions and do their math, are nothing but speculations because in reality, no one can know how much money someone made. That's impossible. But as Juan Gabriel used to say, what you see, you don't ask. And there's another famous saying that love and money can't be hidden. This character, Upo, who I'm talking about, Humberto Ojeda, had way more money than Loma, Pocha, and other famous figures there in Sinaloa. What is said is that he was more like a competitor to the Lord of the Skies, as I had already told you before, and as you will know. He was one of those who benefited the most when the plastic surgery incident of the Lord of the Skies happened. Since the entire government was keeping an eye on Juarez and Robachivas, he took advantage of the situation there in Juarez to position himself as a key man and become even more successful in the merchandise trade. I am going to tell you about some of the small things he did, which are not even a fair percentage of everything he accomplished. He had so much money that the McLaren, that was just a simple toy for him. It was virtually nothing. He owned companies in Culiacan, like construction firms, sifters for extracting materials, mines, breeders of different animals. He had agricultural packaging, commercial premises, rental offices, apartment complexes in Culiacan and other cities in Mexico, and the United States as well for rent. Houses and lands. Also, there in Culiacan, he had hundreds and hundreds of hectares. He also had ranches, boats, airplanes, helicopters, tuna boats, agricultural lands, thousands upon thousands of hectares in Sinaloa. For example, for the direction of Costa Rica, there was a lot of about 12,000 hectares. There were 9,000 hectares in Culiacancito. In fact, I heard that in one of the offices, when the Robachivas family, they got back the things that had been stolen from them in just one office. They got back the documents for over 30,000 hectares, shopping plazas. And what I'm talking about, as I tell you, is in Sinaloa, because in Mexico City, they had many more properties. Though, than in Sinaloa, in the United States, they had towers worth $85 million. That was the cost of just one tower, and they had several. Besides, in the United States, they had businesses, companies, and properties. In Europe, they also had properties. Colombia, also in Guadalajara, in Sonora, over by Monterrey. He was a partner in a company that manufactured, or manufactures plastic, which in 2005 was billing about $200 million a year. Obviously, there in that company, he was a partner. He was not the sole owner. They also had thousands of hectares there in Nuevo Leon. And well, that's a way of putting it. Because obviously I don't know everything he owned, nor did his family at the time of his passing. But like all of you, my dear audience, are very interested in knowing how much money certain characters had, or what businesses they had, or what they owned. That's why I'm telling you this. Everything I've managed to research to try to please you as I've tried to do every episode. Okay, friends? What I'm talking about, those things and properties he owned. But we still need to mention the merchandise that was left behind. Because a person told me that he had left a not insignificant amount of between 50 and 40 tons spread across the United States, Colombia, Mexico, and Europe. Also, people who saw Robachivas' notebook confirmed it to me, and they told me that among clients and partners, they ended up owing him, rounding the numbers, about 150 or 200 million. Imagine that. That's why I tell you that the McLaren was just a toy for him. But of course, over the years, it became an exquisite collection piece. Here, I will tell you some of the things he did or built that are still standing. This church dedicated to Our Lady of Refuge in Culiacan, which I'm showing you the picture of here. I'll also show you a video of the cross he had made here, and to place on the top of Cerro de la Chiva, the highest hill on the outskirts of Culiacan, where, as you can see in this video, it's where most of the communication companies place their repeating antennas, since it's the highest point in the city. As an extra piece of information, getting up there is quite an adventure. Many people enjoy going up there on motorcycles, on racers, utility vehicles, and for some others is a very beautiful place for hiking. But well, here I am going to show you the video so you can see it for yourselves. The cross and everything I am talking about. It might look a bit small in the video, but in reality, it's huge. Also, since his son really liked playing baseball, but his school didn't have a field for practicing this sport, so he ordered to build a baseball field so his son could play with his friends in the most prestigious neighborhood in Culiacan at that time, which is Colonia Las Quintas. He bought several pieces of land there, combined them, and built a baseball field and a basketball court with a restroom and bar area, and a section for games. I will also show you a picture of this place, in which he built a huge fence and installed professional stadium lights so his son could also play at night. Humberto was a very indulgent dad. He bought his son some three-wheeler, a TV, since at that time four-wheelers did not yet exist, or they had not arrived to Culiacan yet. But don't think he just bought one or two for his son to ride. No, he bought 53-wheeled motorcycles for his son, his cousins, and his friends, so they could all go riding together. At his house, he had a swimming pool and a frontennis court, which back in the 90s weren't very common, which I think even now to this day is not very common either. It's unusual for someone to have a frontennis court in their backyard. But hey, they also had a warehouse with a car workshop because Robachivas loved cars. Listen. The cars he had, and don't pour. And that personally, I got to see and ride many of them. He had, the famous McLaren, a BMW Series 7, a Mercedes, a Red Viper, a small collectionable Mini Cooper. Also he had because he really liked Ford pickup trucks. From the years 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, also had an armored Ram Charger. One of the most impressive things to me was an old black Rolls-Royce. But when I say very old, it's because it was from the 50s, 60s, I don't know, but that car is very beautiful. It's gorgeous. And for those wondering, how did I see everything at Sacrifice? Those cars right there, I'm telling you, I saw all those cars, and I got to play in that little baseball field there in Las Quintas. In the one I showed you earlier, and I also got to see many of the things I told you about, because an uncle of mine is compadre of the son of Robachivas. That's the reason I have all this information, and I'd like to take the opportunity to send a big hug and greetings to my friend, wherever he may be. And now, well, he is the owner of many of the things I mentioned, which include the famous McLaren, which I will talk about a little later on. Well, the Robachivas had started working in the 1980s. I don't know if before, but had members of the Cifuentes Villa family as partners. They are from the enchanting and beautiful country of Colombia, by the way. I send many greetings to all the Colombian friends who watch us and listen to us. Well, among them, in that family, almost everyone was involved in the business. There were several siblings. I'll tell you about a few. Francisco Ivan was there, whom they called Pancho. Fernando was there, so were Alexander and Mrs. Dolly. And the one who was closest to Robachivas was Jorge Milton Cifuente. Here I am going to show you a picture of Mr. Jorge Milton. This gentleman, Jorge Milton, worked with Robachivas since the early 80s, and Milton also met Loma a few years later. And I think before meeting Loma, he also worked with another well-known figure in Sinaloa, Mr. Baltazar Diaz. Here I will also show you a photo of Milton's brother, Mr. Alexander Hildebrando. Well, Humberto Ojeda brought more than 1,000 tons into the United States, and that's because he had a very well-structured work system. And obviously, back in those years, it wasn't used as much. That there were so many snitches that are making it harder for everyone to walk like this days. Everywhere you look now, you'll find a snitch, and it seems there are more every day. Well, Robachivas. Back then, he owned tuna boats that had secret compartments to hide the merchandise. That made him earn millions and millions of dollars because the transportation belonged to him as well, so he kept most of the profits. And he would charge his partners a percentage, so he had a lot of money. That's why I tell you he was a major competitor for the Lord of the Skies, and likewise for Loma, who, in those years, I believe, Robachivas moved a lot more merchandise than the Loma, but they were two completely different kind of people. Since Robachivas was showy and liked to attract attention, liked to buy luxury vehicles, etc., and on the other hand, Loma was more discreet, and as I've said, having money is one thing, but having power is quite another. Robachivas had a lot of money, but Loma and the group he was with, Loma had a lot of power. Well, as I already told you, Robachiva was a man who knew how to make money. But he was a man who liked to work independently and didn't want to join any group. And that, in that environment, is not a good thing. As I told you before, the pocha. He ordered the resignation of some people and pointed fingers at others who refused to work with him. And it's not that only the pocha did it, or he invented it. I just mention it because it was already said in a previous episode. But there are definitely more people who do not like the idea. That there are private individuals in this business. I'll be frank with you. I don't exactly know why Humberto was resigned. As many theories are speculated, what I can assure you is that among the theories I'm going to tell you lies the true cause. One of them is that the general, the brother of the Lord of the Skies and Loma, sent a message to Robachivas. After the Lord of the Skies had passed away, Robachivas didn't want to go, and he said, that he didn't need or didn't bother going with someone, that he didn't need anyone at all, that he worked very comfortably alone, and he didn't have to explain himself to anyone. Another theory, it's that supposedly they found out he was working with someone and that person was related to the Arellanos. Another theory was that they disliked him because he was very flashy and liked to draw a lot of attention, and, well, no one likes to be overshadowed. So what happens? Robachivas was getting too big for his boots, as they say in the slang. Arturo Beltran once remarked, back in the year 98, around those years, he was resigned out of pure envy because Robachivas bragged too much, and that his buddy Loma didn't like that at all, and that Vicente had told him that he had also been helping enemies of Sinaloa like the Arets. And some people say something that truly I don't believe it, and that's my humble opinion. Some people say that Humberto Ojdea, the Robachivas, got resigned because he was building a house, but not any house. He was building an extremely big and luxurious home, and that upset Loma, as I already told you. I really don't believe that theory. But then, you never know in that business. Anything can happen. Well, let me tell you, that house back in the time I'm talking about was roughly in 98. It was going to be the best house in Culiacan, the coolest. And I say this because I got to see the construction plans. It had a pool slide. And by that time, obviously, one of the first, I'm telling you. From those years, the 90s, an intelligent house because the windows would automatically become darker, depending on when the sun was hitting them. It would have a cinema room, 2 bars, gazebos, a lot of garden, its own gym, spa, sauna, front tennis court. The most modern kitchen for that time. And I don't remember what else, but it was something incredible. Here, I'll also leave you the coordinates and the view of what it looks like from the outside. Well, if I remember correctly, it was in the year 1998 when they gave him the resignation. He left in the morning. Robachivas was dropping his son off at school, and the Yomas Tolarospis, sent by his son Vicente, showered him with shots. Over 40. Here's a picture of Chente. But Robachivas was in a square-shaped grayish Cherokee SUV, which was armored. And I'm telling you because I saw that car myself, and I had to get on it a few times. The Sarazon Toridol. That truck had a system to spill oil and to emit smoke. And well, I don't remember what else, but the point is that Robachivas, what he did was to cover his younger son who was also aboard the Cherokee. But a shot went through the keyhole and was the one that finally resigned Mr. Humberto Ojeda. After that, the van hit a tree or a pole. I don't remember well. I'm not sure. But just so you realize, you see, they say that back in the day there was ethics and honor in this environment, and that they respected the family. Here's a clear example that this is false, because they didn't wait for Robachiva to be alone. Listen closely, dear audience. That path won't bring you anything good. There's no loyalty, no friendship, no respect. That's a utopia used only to gloss over the ugly stuff to make it look good. But don't fall for that. What many people say about past generations being different, that there was honor, it's not true. What's certain is that these new generations from today really go too far, and they respect less and less. And it's getting messier everywhere, but let's not kid ourselves. This business will never leave you anything good, and it will always be this way. Well, friends, when Mr. Humberto Ojeda was resigned, the usual happened. What always happens in this business? The theft starts everywhere, the vultures come out, unsheathe their claws, and the plundering begins. Everyone wants to take advantage and have some edge. Workers, relatives, front men, everyone hits the jackpot. The first to run away in terror was Jorge Milton Cifuentes. He immediately leaves and takes refuge in Colombia. And as I tell you, the front men, workers, and family, close to Humberto Ojeda like his sisters, hit the jackpot. And little by little, they start taking over everything they can. I mean businesses, lands for farming, properties, cars, an endless list of things. It's just an exaggeration, the amount of things they stole from him, but I'll tell you what happened later. But before I forget, someone left Sinaloa to never return. But he left fully loaded. He stole more than 450 gold bars from Robachivas. Just imagine a single person knowing where that treasure was. He truly hit the jackpot, but really, this happens often in this environment. But, all right, we need to move on from what happened. The woman and the children of the Robachivas saw everything that was happening. That they were being blatantly robbed and also fearing what had happened to the gentleman, so they decided to move to another city. But they were coming and going from Culiacan all the time. Over the years in 2001, as you may know, El Pocha leaves Puente Grande, and it so happens that someone introduces Licenciado Damaso to the widow of Robachivas. And the Colombian Jorge Milton Cifuentes goes to Sinaloa to try and investigate what happened to his partner. It was around the year 2003, because what Milton wanted was to work. But if they had given his partner the resignation, then he thought he might be in danger. So he gathered his courage and decides to venture out to see what had happened. Obviously, it's not like he left with his eyes closed and without knowing anything. No, of course not. Before that, on setting foot in Sinaloa again, he asked, called, and was told to go ahead, that he would be warmly welcomed there. I tell you, he gathered courage because in that environment, you can never trust anyone's word. Well, once in Sinaloa, Mr. Milton meets with the widow of Robachivas, and they talk. Speaking with the widow, and she introduced him to the licenciado. Milton, upon learning that the licenciado was working with Pocha, asked if he could arrange a meeting with him, and the licenciado immediately said yes. They would agree and do so immediately. A meeting is arranged for Milton. He boards a small plane to move with El Pocha During the flight, Milton realizes that flying in a small plane in those places is very risky because the runways are very short and any mistake, or an unforeseen event on the runway and the plane might have an accident. So when he talked to El Pocha to make a good impression, he told him he was gifting a helicopter that was in Culiacan to El Pocha. They say his eyes only sparkled because of the gift. Then he tells Pocha, "It's an MD-500 helicopter with no tail rotor and it makes no noise. But I ask you a favor to help me investigate who was the one that sent Humberto Ojeda's resignation, and also if he can make sure he can work there in Mexico without any risk." Right there in that meeting, Milton offers Pocha the opportunity to work using tuna boats, just like he did with Robachivas, because they never had a single incident and no losses. Esto bene. That it was a marvel, because ships could be at sea for up to 2 or 3 months. Near Colombia or Ecuador, it was easy and quick to load them up and send them to Mexico. Obviously, as you might imagine, Pocha loved the idea and told him to go ahead, that it was perfect, and asked when they could expect the gift, referring to the chopper, helicopter. And Milton told him right away, just as soon as I got back to Culiacan, I would check on the helicopter's condition, and to send a pilot to move it wherever Pocha wants it. And of course, Pocha said I would take care of the Robachivas. I will investigate how that resignation went. And about security, don't worry, you'll be able to work and be here as if you were at home. That's how things stood. And when Milton went down to the city, he told the news to the widow of Robachivas, the Fratrintam, that they had to send the helicopter to the Pocha. The widow obviously got upset, and she asked him why he had done that, if the helicopter had been her husband's, and so now it belonged to her. That helicopter was not bought jointly at all, meaning Milton had no say over what to do or not do with the helicopter. But Milton told her, "Think, woman, think carefully. He's going to help me find out what happened to your husband. And he can offer you and me protection so you won't have things stolen from you anymore, and that you and your children can be at ease." The lady wasn't very convinced, but she had no other option. She had to agree to give up the helicopter. I'll show you a picture of a similar helicopter so you can get an idea of what it was like. In fact, the helicopter was sky blue. Well, friends, here ends the first part of this story. Stay tuned for next week to know the second part of the story. Thanks everyone for your support, and look forward to more content from your friend Okran. Greetings.